Time that I was making anyone feel uncomfortable. I never knew at the time I was making anyone feel uncomfortable. And I certainly never, ever meant to offend anyone or hurt anyone or cause anyone any pain. That is the last thing I would ever want to do. I ask the people of this state to wait for the facts from the Attorney General's report before forming an opinion. Get the facts, please, before forming an opinion. And the Attorney General is doing that review. I will fully cooperate with it, and then you will have the facts. And make a decision when you know the facts. I also want you to know that I have learned from what has been an incredibly difficult situation for me as well as other people. And I've learned an important lesson. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for whatever pain I caused anyone. I never intended it. And I will be the better for this experience. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Governor. If you would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your window. We'll take a brief moment to compile the Q&A roster. Governor, your first question comes from Marcia Kramer of WCBS. Marcia, your line is now open. Please unmute your microphone.
Governor, can you hear me?
Marcia Kramer, the Dean of the Delegation.
So, Governor, I have actually two questions. First of all, I wonder if, given the distractions of these two investigations, especially the one involving sexual harassment, you feel that you might want to step aside, or that you should step aside, especially in negotiating the budget, which could be one of the most important budgets that the state has ever had to deal with. And my second question has to do with the pictures that have surfaced of you touching the face of Anna Ruck. The reason I'm asking the question is that I've also seen circulated pictures of you touching the faces of people all over the state, young and old, whatever, and I wonder what you make of those pictures.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Marcia. Let me take both questions. First, you're right about the state budget. It is critically important. The state budget is going to turn the page to the rebuilding phase. We've been working very hard to get funding from Washington to fill the gap, and that has been going well. We have to see what we actually get. But we then have tremendous financial needs on top of that. People have to pay their rent, they need food, et cetera. You also have New York City, which is in a very precarious situation. It's teetering, to use a word. Crime is way up. Homelessness is way up. Many people have left New York City. Hamptons, Mid-Hudson Valley, other states. We have to get New York City functional again and safe again and viable again. And we have to do that quickly. We have a new mayor that's going to be selected basically in June, I guess. Something could happen in November, but basically in June. And that work has to start right away. So yes, the budget is very important. Having said that,
should you step aside now and let somebody else handle it?
Yeah, having said that, I'm going to cooperate with the Attorney General's investigation and do the budget. Remember, we did a budget last year in the spring in the heat of COVID, where it was the most intense period of my life, of this government's life, of this state's life. And we did both, and we'll do both here. On the pictures, Marcia, I understand the opinion of and feelings of Ms. Ruhr. And you are right. You can find hundreds of pictures of me making the same gesture with hundreds of people, women, men, children, etc. You can go find hundreds of pictures of me kissing people, men, women. It is my usual and customary way of greeting. You know that because you've watched me for, let's just say, more years than we care to remember. By the way, it was my father's way of greeting people. You're the governor of the state. You want people to feel comfortable. You want to reach out to them. I do it. I kiss and hug legislators. I was at an event.
All right, we're continuing to monitor Governor Andrew Cuomo's news conference. He's taking questions now, answering questions and dodging some about his sexual harassment allegations. Let's welcome back now T.W. Shannon, former Speaker of the Oklahoma State House. Also sticking around with us, Air Force veteran Anna Paulina Luna. Anna Paulina, first to you. How do you think Governor Cuomo is doing here? The last question we just heard in the commercial break was someone asking him, why did it take so long for you to come out and answer these allegations? You know, drip, 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 something's coming in every single day. How much longer do you think he can stay on the job?
I mean, I think that he should personally step down. I'm actually very surprised to see the left media even pushing for his resignation, as well as Democrats in New York. And so I'm glad to see that. But, you know, the fact is that what he's done, there's photo evidence of that. And regardless of his quote unquote apology, we're seeing now a pattern of behavior that is not something that I would want any person in a position of power to be doing, especially given also the nature of his, older living facility and senior citizen scandal that just was uncovered recently as well.
And I think that's kind of an underlying sense of frustration for a lot of people, especially people who lost loved ones, TW, in these nursing homes is, you know, how many people had to die before Democrats felt like they could finally come forward and talk about this stuff?
Well, and again, John, the point that you make, the Democrats, they didn't, that really never bothered them. Remember, it was Joe Biden who said that Governor Cuomo is the gold standard of how you govern through a pandemic. So never forget that it was Joe Biden and the rest of the Democrats who have been lauding and applauding Governor Cuomo with daily press briefings during the height of the pandemic about how to address it, even though we've seen New York with some of the worst numbers, they've had some of the worst response. And frankly, the governor's about destroyed the economy of one of the biggest cities and the greatest cities in the history of the world. There's a lot that Governor Cuomo will have to give account for. And it boggles the mind the way the media and the way that the left has handled this so differently than when it was a Republican who was going through the exact same thing. I think we can all remember when Justice Kavanaugh was having to deal with allegations from 30 years ago about how much alcohol he drank when he was in college. This flies in the face of that, certainly. The facts need to be heard. I agree with that for sure. But I can't help but, grimace at the way that the left has a completely different standard when it's a Democrat versus when it's a Republican.
The line of questioning from the media was, I think, very fair. Considering the allegations here, and we're not saying he did these things, and he's right, we should wait for the investigation to be complete, but it's very distracting. And when you're doing something, Anna Paulina, like, negotiating a budget, can you really be focused on that when you're facing so much pressure from these allegations?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, he keeps pivoting. If you hear the questions, he continuously pivots back to pinning it on the attorney general. And at the end of the day, I mean, he is essentially going to be maintaining and balancing and focusing on one of the most important budgets here in the United States. So I don't think that he's going to be 100% focused, just like he hasn't really been 100% focused on, I believe, the people of New York during this entire pandemic. So, I mean, you look at this, you look at how historically the media has treated Republicans when facing similar allegations, but I want to make it known, especially to the viewers tuning in right now, I mean, there's photos. You can see him grabbing one of the accusers in a photo that's in a very uncomfortable way. And I think about this as a woman. If this is my little sister, if this is my mother, if this is my grandmother, and I saw that, I would be furious.
Yeah, you're going to fly one of those fighter planes right over his house, right? And drop some bombs on him. Rhetorically speaking, of course, we don't condone violence. That was a joke. That was a joke, everyone. And TW, you know, when you were the Speaker of the House, you never grabbed anybody by their face, right? That's not what you do. Apparently, though, Mario Cuomo was into that as well, but a different time. We got to run. Anna Paulina, great to see you.
Absolutely.
TW, great to see you as well.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, John.
All right, coming up, how do you continue your normal life in the spotlight when your family member is going through a very public scandal? Our Black Sheep edition of Brand Power is coming up next.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.